From this huge bay, you can see Vesuvius. The bay is pretty, graceful, even cinematographic. But the bay is really extraordinary because it conceals an invisible story. In this part of Italy, everyone knows Pompeii and Vesuvius to the east of Naples. However, to the west, there's another volcano, the Phlegrean Fields, and hence this bay, the Bay of Pozzuoli. And at the bottom of this bay, in a few meters of water, is Baia, the remains of antique villas and of the port of the Roman Empire. A city at the bottom of the sea. Franca Scipiccini is an archaeologist. She's excavated in the bay. Today, she's guide to Michel Lohr, renowned underwater archaeologist who's dived almost everywhere except here.
And the area itself, has it been excavated? I imagine that there are relics thrown overboard.
This area's never been excavated.
There's a load of work to be done.
It is a load of work, but imagine this whole area, the whole of the current Bay of Baia. There was just a lake. All the rest were buildings, grand villas. What's more, grand villas belonging to the most important people of the end of the Republic, Julius Caesar, Cicero. Everybody's villa was here, lots belonging to the aristocracy.
It was the Saint-Tropez of the age.
Exactly.
They spent the summers here.
Exactly, to spend the summer in the spas.
At the spa.
Exactly.
When you dive at Baia, you're not diving in any commonplace spot. Already, there's a road, a sign that the place is vast, and a map, a sign that you can get lost. Above all, you have to imagine the riches, the colossal villas running down the length of the hill, the gold and the statues. Baia has bequeathed a way of life and a common name.
Baia
is the capital of these villas of relaxation and leisure. There's a whole series of moralizing poets complaining that Baia è trimen amoris, and women arrive in Baia as virgins and leave as whores. Baia is the gilded beach of the Blessed Venus. At Baia they ride in boats. At Baia the emperors commit their adulteries and their murders. Baia finally becomes the archetype of the dissolute and luxurious life, of luxury itself. Today, when you say the Bay of, you're only repeating the name of Baia, transformed into the archetype of the Gulf, luxury, beauty and refinement.
So Baia has given its name to all the bays in the world. Stefano Di Caro is director for the entire Italian archaeology. So his opinion on the importance of Baia in Roman antiquity is an authoritative one. Baia, which we find in the text of Seneca, Tacitus and Strabo. Baia, whose traces we are gradually losing.
We don't know the exact moment when it all stopped. It probably happened as and when, because that's the way the bradyseism works.
So one day Baia was submerged, but its magic has remained.
It's incredible. We're moving around in the middle of a site. You let yourself be carried along by time. You completely forget that you're in the water. It's astonishing. It takes your breath away. In a career, you always have some high points like this. Actually, it's been 25 years that I wanted to come here. It's an opportunity, really. Deep down, I was expecting a lot, but this is much bigger and better.
How could Baia, the holiday resort of emperors end up several meters underwater. To understand its fate and its engulfing, we need to understand the volcanism of the region. Not that of Vesuvius, but that of the Phlegrean fields, for which the smoke from the Solfatara volcano is the most obvious outward sign.
So follow me. We'll go and see the control room of the Vesuvius Observatory of the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology. It's one of the oldest observatories in the world. Here we have Ischia, the island of Ischia, Vesuvius, and finally the Phlegrean fields. Each case shows the seismic activity of the sites in the caldera of the Phlegrean fields, and here we have the Baia station. It's via these screens here that we monitor the seismicity of the volcanoes in the region.
Aldo Zolo is a geophysicist at the Federico II University of Naples. In 2001, he heads a project in the Bay of Pozzuoli to gather millions of items of data that he is still processing today.
The body of the volcano is actually in the sea, and the results of this analysis will be presented in this animation. Here we can see the position of the magma chamber. The red points on the animation represent the position of the seisms that took place during the bradyseism of 1982 to 1984. Here there's a little portion that is represented on the map, and there were more than 10,000 in 2 years.
So Baia is situated on a volcano, where a phenomenon known as bradyseism certainly caused its engulfing. Here the earth moves vertically, goes up on one side, down on the other. Beside the bay, facing the submerged ruins, is Monte Nuovo. It pushed up in a single night in 1538. These movements have never stopped anyone from living here. To understand a little more about the phenomenon that engulfed Baia, we must go to the port of Pozzuoli, where the earth rose more than 3 meters between 1982 and 1984.
We measured the greatest vertical displacement here during the bradyseism crises. In the harbor, you can see a discontinuity, a horizontal line between the blocks of stone, the rows of brick, and the jumbled blocks of rock below, and there you can actually see where the sea level was before the bradyseism crisis.
You see, on the docks, in the 70s and 80s, Pozzuoli started to rise and rise, and it rose 2 meters in the water. The fishermen went their various ways.
Faced with the instability of the ground, the authorities evacuated the old town and rehoused the people elsewhere. Here, it's not the sea that rises and falls, it's the ground. Baia suffered the same phenomenon. Not all of Baia is underwater. Merged into the town are the remains of the hot baths where Roman aristocracy came for care and relaxation. Baia the idle, the luxurious. Baia where everything was possible.
It really is an important place because it's the first example of a construction that uses a cupola. Actually, it's thanks to the mortar from Pozzuoli, which is extremely light, that we can build cupolas like these. And this is the first experiments with this type of architecture, which later takes us to the Pantheon in Rome. Because in Baia, they often experimented with types of architecture which were then transferred to Rome.
In the Roman mind, there's this determination to control nature, and Baia was a sort of laboratory where they took it on themselves to remodel the coastline and build into the sea. But they couldn't do a great deal against this constantly shifting ground. One question remains. When was Baia engulfed? This Roman monument, the Serapis Market in Pozzuoli, gives some clues. It is the main marker of ground movements in the bay. In its stones, it retains the traces of different water levels over more than 2,000 years, therefore the traces of ground variations.
At Pozzuoli and Baia, we have ranges of sea level from the Roman period, in the order of 15 meters. If you compare this with other ancient Mediterranean ports and stable areas like Marseille, we have a range in the order of 50 centimeters. So we're talking about a totally different scale.
In 2004, Christophe Morange, a French geomorphologist, took shellfish samples from the columns. These shellfish have been dated, thus giving the period of the submersion of Baia.
So by studying Pozzuoli, we can estimate the date of the submersion of the port of Baia, which would seem to be around the 4th, 6th century AD, in any case, the first phase of submersion.
Baia is gradually disappearing below the waves, and certain moralists see in that a punishment for all its sins. Then Baia falls into oblivion. However, a few marvels were to be uncovered by the first underwater archaeological digs. Statues of the greatest refinement rise from the sea. Statues such as one only saw in Rome, and which gives us a measure of what Baia might have been.
In a way, it is the cities of Vesuvius that give us the measure of the richness of Baia. When you see the gold artifacts, the silver artifacts, the pearls, the gold of a city like Pompeii, where there wasn't a single Roman noble, no Roman senator, then you can imagine what Julius Caesar's villa must have been like. Yes, you can really imagine what it might have been like. And above all, you can measure how much has been lost of all that.